we are, Scalable Insights Podcast. We've got Jeff, the producer. Jeff, how are you?
Great. How about you?
Good, good, good. Very special guest today, Bill Casey. Also happens to be my brother-in-law. Awesome guy. And Bill Casey has a great story. We got a great podcast for you today. So, Bill, how you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me. Very fun. I'm not sure how exciting or interesting my story is, but there is a story there.
That's a great story. So, so walk us through, sort of the arc of your career, and then, we'll take a deep dive into like what were those seminal moments, or what are those bits of advice that you have for folks making their way in the world.
So should I start when I was a paper boy for the Atlantic City
Press?
Of
course. Yeah, of course. I didn't know this. This is what I love about this. I love hearing, like, people that I know, they'll tell me stories. Like, I told you one guy drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, time out. Wait, so you were a paper boy?
Paper boy, morning press, Atlantic City Press. I had the full street from front to back, had the big basket in the front of my bike, had to fold the papers every morning. Loved it. Great job. Went down and every morning go on the beach because you had to do the beachfront and get to look at the beach, and I'd watch, the fishermen out there. Anyway, it was that was my first job, but things evolved from there. Thank goodness I was able to promote myself out of there, or graduate my way out of there. To go back, I guess people ask me what I do, and I say I'm a finance guy, but I guess originally I was a banker.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got out of school, the big thing to do was the popular thing to do was to go into these commercial credit training programs. So I was able to get a job at Mellon Bank as a analyst, and was trained, and it was actually phenomenal training. They taught us about, income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, how to structure financings and such. And with that foundation, I ended up moving to New York, and New York took me to Zurich, as you know. I lived in Zurich working for UBS. Zurich took me to London, where I ran a group of people lending to financial institutions, mostly Wall Street firms that had moved over to London after the Big Bang of 1986, when the UK markets deregulated and U.S. firms went over there. So I was over there lending money to Wall Street firms that were trading and doing all kinds of investment banking type products. Left London, came back to New York, and quickly left UBS and went to go work for one of my clients, and spent a few years with Smith Barney, and that's when Sandy Weil and Jamie Dimon had taken over Smith Barney.
Oh, wow.
Smith Barney was that lazy old firm, they called it. It was, what was it? We make money the old-fashioned way.
Right.
We earn it, right?
Right, yeah.
That guy, John Hausman, he was great. Worked for those guys for 5 or 6 years. Very interesting. We bought Shearson from Lehman Brothers, American Express. I was intimately involved in that acquisition and structuring all the things around it. And then decided to get back into banking, left New York, came back to Philadelphia, went back to work for my first boss at Mellon Bank again, and commuted to New York 3 days a week, lending money to Wall Street firms again, and did that for a few years and got bored with it, and then went to go work for Merrill Lynch. Was with Merrill for 2 years, and was asked to go up to Toronto and be part of this acquisition. We bought the last independent brokerage firm in Toronto in Canada, called Midland Walwyn, and so I went up there to set up all the financing programs, commercial paper, long-term debt. We did a lot of double dip, cross-border tax trades. It was a very interesting time. Brought my 3 kids up there, and I spent 3 years up there. The kids spent 2 school years up there, so that was great. Came back and hung in with those guys for a few more years, and then just had enough. Took a year off.
Yeah.
Went from a 16 to an 8 handicap, which was fun. Realized I was running out of money and decided to go back to work, and then went to work for General Motors, part of GMAC. I was the treasurer of their mortgage business, and during that time, GMAC was sold by General Motors because it was the only asset that was of any value in the General Motors, General Motors at one point used to be. What was good for General Motors was good for America, or vice
Right.
versa. General Motors was really struggling, so they sold GMAC to a company called Cerberus. And Cerberus is a turnaround firm in New York. And a Cerberus is a three-headed dog at the gate of hell. And these guys chose to call their firm Cerberus. We'll leave it at that. We won't go into that story. That's a whole nother, non-G-rated, interesting time of my life. Anyway, blah, 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 but spent a bunch of time there, left, took some time off, and then my financial advisor decided to start his own firm and asked if I would let him manage my money in this new firm, and I was into it. But I said also I would be interested in investing. So I actually provided some of the capital to get him started. And about a year into him getting this company up and going, it was called Locust Capital, I decided I didn't want to do the corporate thing anymore. So I converted my preferred shares to common and went in and helped him run it. And that was in 2009. So now it's 2013. So that was 14 years ago.
Wow.
So now this is the longest place I've ever worked.
Right.
Which is interesting. All those other places were 5-6 year deals, and now running this this firm with my partner is the longest longest position I've ever had, and it's been great. It's been really great. So that's where I am now. That was a long answer to a short question, but that's sort of how it all worked. And it's been a good run. I mean, the ability to have lived in a bunch of really interesting cities like New York and London and Zurich and Philadelphia, Toronto. Spent a lot of times in Brussels working on Euroclear projects, which was the Euro version of the Depository Trust Company. Anyway, doing some pretty interesting things. So I've had a good run.
So what was so you've lived in interesting places. So what was it like working and living in Zurich?
Yeah. The whole time that the entire time of my career since I graduated college to when I moved to Zurich, I just worked hard and I worked every weekend, and it was just my normal routine to get up on Saturdays and, not go in crack of dawn, but work from, 10 to 3 or what have you. It was just
Right.
my normal thing. Everybody worked hard. And I got to Zurich, and the first Saturday I wake up, I kind of get myself together, and around 10 o'clock I go down to the office, and there's a chain link fence over the door. And they're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to work on the weekends here, which is kind of interesting because you think
Welcome to Europe.
Yeah. You think the Swiss work their tails off, and they
Right.
do, but they work from 7 to 5.
7
And
to
they
5,
take their-
and that's it.
That's it. On to the next thing.
Yeah.
But it was really enjoyable. I loved it. It was super organized. As you hear, everything about Switzerland is phenomenal. We skied on the weekends. It was amazing. Everything about Switzerland was just phenomenal. I would go back. We were back there last year. We took the kids back and showed them around Zurich, and it's still a magical place.
Yeah.
It was good.
And how lucky to be able to work there, especially how old were you at that point?
27.
27.
I know. Liam's age.
That's
My
living
son's
right
age.
there, brother.
Yeah. It was
And then London must have been fun. Like what was a cool part of working and living in? How long did you live in London for?
for a year. It was the equal and opposite of Zurich. So Zurich was sort of put together and clean and organized, and London was not. I remember coming in one day, and I would just go to Marks and Spencer and get a sandwich and sit at my desk and work, and everybody else would go out and they would get a couple pints.
Yeah, they'd start drinking at noon.
Start drinking.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
I know that well. Lots of trips to London.
Yeah. And so my my assistant at the time comes back around 2:30, and she comes up and she says, "Bill, I can't do any work this afternoon." I'm like, "What's going on?" She said, "I'm pissed. I had 3 pints at lunch and I can't do any work. I'm pissed. I'm drunk." And I'm like, wait, it's not so different, completely inappropriate, but it was acceptable there.
Oh my God.
Totally acceptable. In Zurich,
That's
you would've gotten
hilarious.
fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had too much caffeine or something, but not too much beer. So very different environment, but it was really a fun time to be there because, as I mentioned, in '86, when they deregulated the markets, the U.S. firms weren't there. So they were literally just arriving and kind of figuring out how to get in and building buildings, and Canary Wharf wasn't even a thing yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And it was sort of like the Wild West, and they needed capital and financing. And Union Bank of Switzerland at the time was a AAA rated bank. So I had the keys to the purse, and they we had a great time. It was extraordinary. Lent a lot of good money to people, and had structured some really interesting financings. So it was very fun, and I really wanted to stay, but my bosses in New York were like, "All right, you've been away for 2 years. You're coming home." I'm like, "Wait, I'm making all this money for the bank. Why don't you just let me stay here?" And that's why I ended up leaving and going to Smith Barney. I'm like, "This is crazy. You made me move home. I'm out of here." So anyway, it was great. It was very fun.
But it's so much fun. Like when we were expanding with the relocation lead business, we would, we started off, we're like, all right, let's do New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. Let's do all the big cities. Then we knocked those out. And then we're like, okay, let's go down to like, Baltimore and like St. Louis and all that. So we started knocking down smaller and smaller cities. So finally we got to, and then, of course we went into Canada or no, we got to a certain point and I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, Harrisburg, let's go to Toronto. Let's do Toronto. Let's do, it was interesting because every time we open up a new market, people would tell us we wouldn't be successful there, the program, right? So we started calling California to sell in California and they're like, oh, dude, where are you from? Where are you calling from? Pennsylvania. Oh, that's East Coast, man. We're laid back here, we're all surfer people, and this lead thing isn't going to work in California. And then, of course, it did. And then we started calling into Canada, and they're like, oh, where are you calling from? Oh, this is Canada. We're French, this will never work here, you have to speak French, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, it worked. And then we were down to, like, Peoria, and I'm looking, they're showing me the next, Peoria? Let's go to London.
Nice.
What are we doing in Peoria, Illinois? So then we went to London, and then I wound up during that expansion going there a lot. I was there like twice a year. But if you ever have the opportunity to work abroad, it's such a cool, and now I have like a bunch of friendships from that.
Yeah, that's nice.
But it is, right? It's just you're so used to doing things the way we do business here, but going to a different culture or different country is really it's enriching.
I think it's I always equate it to like pulling your blinders off. In the U.S. everybody's just so so U.S. centric, and once you get over there, you pull your blinders off, and people have such a different perspective on things and the way they think, and they're way more global than we are in the way we think about issues and address issues. People tend to be much more up on current events and more globally than the U.S. So that's why I listen and watch BBC, because you kind of get a little bit more of a global perspective. But I agree. I think it's just such a nice opportunity, whether you get to study abroad or live abroad or live and work abroad. Yeah. I would love for my kids to have that opportunity. Yeah. Because I think it really changes you in a positive way.
Yeah. And there's so many, and because in the U.S. we're just it's so easy to do business here, just staying focused. Yeah. And then, but looking, if you're expanding your business before you go to Peoria, or, I should have done it sooner, going to those other markets, because London is such a great market. There's so many great markets in the UK, but expanding it. And then, of course, we opened up our operations in the Philippines, and most of that has to do with, to be honest with you, is because COVID gave me a kick in the pants to do that, because we needed people, and we were struggling finding people in the US. And that's been a game changer again. Huh. And the interesting thing with that, I hired Herman, my ops manager. He managed all the outsourcing for one-on-one internet, which is a huge company in Europe. They're kind of like the GoDaddy for Europe.
Okay.
And he was in charge of all their operations in the Philippines and Mexico and so forth. So I hired him, and I said, okay, what do we need to do? Before we started our own business, we were looking for an outsourcing company because we had struggled with outsourcing. Outsourcing isn't, especially for something complicated, isn't just switch the light on and it works. He said, we got to narrow it down to like 4 companies, narrow it down to one of the markets. We got to get on a plane and we got to go to the Philippines and we got to interview them face to face. And I'm like, okay. So we flew over and, man, what a difference. We wound up picking a really good company to do the outsourcing with. And then and it worked out really well. But, it's interesting, that little tweak of going and meeting them face to face so that they know that we're serious, where we had hired outsourcing companies before and we're like, look, we're going to be expanding with you. You need to, and just all kinds of problems. But because we met face to face, we made a completely different decision if we had just done it through Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Because you go, you sit, you're actually physically in their location. And then also, I fell in love with the Filipino people. They're just such beautiful people, and like the attitude, the work ethic, the attitude towards Americans. It's just a great experience.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And now, like I said, we have our own company in the Philippines, and then that's just opened up a lot more doors. But,
nice.
Thinking outside of the U.S.,
Haverford, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, wherever you are.
Yeah.
It's and it's been really enriching to me personally, just because of the friendships that I have, with those people, but also, like you said, getting the blinders off.
Yeah.
And, I think it's easy for folks in the U.S. to just really think, sort of U.S. centric.
I'm curious to see how this whole like reversal of globalization, if that's the term that people are using to kind of getting, bringing manufacturing back in, bringing the chip manufacturing back to the U.S., how that's really going to change. I hope it doesn't completely dislodge these things that we're talking about, because it is such a more enriching way to do business and to transact if you have the ability to do things more globally. I think, some of it's protectionism, but, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, what happened with the pandemic and I think we can't have zero manufacturing. We need to have some stuff here, obviously.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was an issue, right? With the chips, right? Is it still
chips,
an issue with the chips?
I think.
Masks, everything. Yeah. It doesn't hurt to hedge that, right? Yeah. So, you're in finance. You don't want to, let's put in all your eggs. That's a reverse hedge, right? Or an opposite of a hedge. What do you call it? Non-hedged.
Yeah, unhedged.
But
anyway.
But yeah. So now you have all this corporate experience. You're with Merrill Lynch, you're with Smith Barney, you're with GMAC, and now you're going from corporate America to being an entrepreneur. Yeah. So what was that like?
Yeah, big change. It was definitely unnerving, but also so enriching that you got to sort of be completely in control of your own destiny. But it's hard to start a new business, really hard. Just a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome. We are in a regulated business, so kind of dealing with compliance and how we grow the business, and how you fund it, and how you kind of your savings are going one way as you're growing the business, and you hope they meet above zero. That was interesting, but I really wish I would have done it a lot earlier. Really owning your own business is the way to go. You can really control things. You benefit from your successes when you work for somebody else. Maybe you get a bonus, but when it's your own business, it's the upside's infinite.
Yeah.
And what we tried to do, and what we were successful in doing, was bringing the big corporate kind of mentality into a small entrepreneurial business, meaning that we didn't sort of just kind of do things haphazardly. We brought a lot of discipline and process that I did as a in the big corporate world, I brought this to our little startup so that as we grew, the processes kind of supported the growth. And I think that was probably the reason that we had so much success in terms of having this strong foundation of different technology and process and ways of doing business that, whether it was 2 people or 42 people, it supported itself. And I think that's an important thing as you do start a business. You can't just, kind of do it haphazardly. You really have to have a strong game plan and processes and methodology. And I think that background that I had working in these big companies really helped us kind of weather the storm and got us into the trajectory that we got into, and grew the firm from 5 million assets under management, AUM they call it, to around 400 million in the span of 7 years. And that doesn't seem like a lot of money when you come from Merrill Lynch, but that's a $1 million household, a $5 million household. There are a lot of $500,000. It's a lot of people and a lot of phone calls and a lot of relationship development. But we did it, and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, and so work you see a partner to start off with,
Yeah,
and also I really appreciate the coming from that corporate background, and especially because you're so highly regulated.
right.
That's that'd be difficult to make that jump right out of the chute, because you almost need that. That's not the kind of stuff you can figure out on the fly, because you can get in trouble.
No, you get in trouble. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the partnership that I had with Gus has been great. He's really a great business development guy. He also has a master's in trust and estates. He's got an LLM. So he brings a lot of the private wealth substance, and I kind of brought the process management piece. So I kind of ran the company, and he sort of brought in the business. I also had clients, and he also helped run the business. But he's a great business development guy, and he's done a phenomenal job growing the business. And I kind of brought the infrastructure side of it. So we were a good partnership, and we had a limited partner too who's still involved, and he's a great guy, and he's contributed a lot to the process. And right now we're 12 people in Philadelphia, but we rolled our company. We merged it into a larger firm in 2017, a company called HBK, and we now have about $6 billion under management. So
wow.
With them, we've grown pretty significantly. In Philadelphia, we're probably around $1 billion. So we're 1/6 of the company, or maybe more like 10% of the company. So we're this is the next chapter of our growth and evolution. So
Yeah, so that's cool. So what has been sort of the biggest challenge, going from the corporate world into being an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning? Because once you hit scale, because you guys are obviously at scale, you've got lots of people that take care of different things. But in the beginning, you're almost a cook. What do they call it? Bottle washer, and whatever.
Absolutely, we did everything from business development to filling out applications for clients to balancing the books to doing payroll. So you wear a lot of hats. The hardest, I think, the hardest part, but also the most invigorating part, is that you don't have a backstop. When you work at Merrill Lynch, you can screw up, and if you lose $1 million, it's a rounding error.
Yeah,
$1 billion. I remember we used to. I ran all the bank relationships and cash management side of things. We would manage all the bank accounts. We had something like 800 bank accounts in the U.S. across all these different institutions, and you do this thing called balance management. So you look at the balances every day to sop up, pull in the balances to your central bank account. And we wouldn't really care about a bank account if it had less, like up to $1 billion. We sort of just ignore. You think to yourself, $1 billion, like that's a lot of money to be sitting in, Topeka, Kansas, at some XYZ bank. But now you're on your own, and you're starting your company. You have 3 bank accounts, and you know exactly where every penny is.
Yeah.
Right. So but that's also the invigorating part. Like, you got to get it done. There's no backstop. So, you know, there's no soft landing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So, it's been very fun. Very fun.
So, so talk to me about, like, personnel is important, especially when you're building the company, because every hire is a critical hire. Walk me through, like, hiring those first, those, because was it just you and Gus in the beginning?
And Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, and Andrew, right. Yeah. So now you're going to go, you're moving up and you're starting to hire folks. Like, talk to me about, like, some of the trials and tribulations and some of the successes, or what did you learn about that process? Because, again, it's different being at Merle, where you've got HR, you've got recruiting, you've got, you just pick up a phone, right? And you can get, people, right? You have
very hard. And it's still a challenge. And now with the, unemployment being at 3.5%, it's really hard to get people, good people. And we've had some turnover at the lower level more recently, but way back when, we had a lot of really good luck with bringing people on. The first guy was, we had him as an intern from my alma mater, Lafayette College. He came in, he searched me out, and he said, I really want to get into this business. And Gus and I looked at each other and said, unpaid internship, sure, come on down, we can afford you. So this guy came in, and we were trying to figure out this new technology that we had and trying to figure out some nuance of the technology. We said, let's give it to the intern, see if he can figure it out. He'll waste a month,
Right.
Keep him occupied. We can kind of do our own thing. Gave him all the the specs of what we wanted done, and off he went. And he came back in an hour, and he said, I think I'm good. And I said, are you good? Like, you know what you need to do? He's like, no, I think I figured it out. And I said, come on, you can't. And he literally had done in an hour what we thought would take him a month.
No way.
I thought, well, we better hire this guy. So we did. Great guy. His name's Sam Feldbaum. Great guy. He left and is now a partner in another firm up in Newtown. But he was great, and he stayed with us for probably 7 years.
Nice.
And we had another guy come in, and I don't think they saw eye to eye, so Sam decided to leave. And in that interim where we had Sam, and we realized that we needed somebody else, we hired. I was at a networking event at the Four Seasons that a good friend of mine was sponsoring, Wendover Corporation, and I met our second hire, and that was 12 years ago, and she's still with us.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of luck, and then she brought in somebody that has been with us 10 years, and they really run the firm. I mean, they know everything that goes on, so it allows Gus and I to do other things. So we've had great luck, and then we've had some turnover. Hired a couple breakaway brokers. That was interesting, from big Wall Street firms that that do things way differently than a registered investment advisor does. And these guys were happy to leave and come join the kinder and gentler side of wealth management. So we have a great group. We have 12, as I mentioned, in Philadelphia, and it's all good.
That's cool.
Yeah. Really
but isn't
good.
it enriching? Like, there's a cool story with the gal you met at our networking, Rebecca. Yeah. So, because for me, these are some of the coolest things about, having your own business, is being able to give people a chance that maybe don't fit the necessarily the profile right out of the chute.
Absolutely.
So walk us through.
Yeah, so that was fascinating. So Rebecca is just a very interesting person. She grew up in Indiana. I think she has 11 siblings.
I did not know this.
Yeah, and homeschooled.
Oh, wow. Did not know that.
Lived on a farm, and she came back to Philadelphia. Her parents were from Philadelphia, and she was working in retail. We met her at your networking event, and I just started chatting with her. What are you doing? Why are you here? She's like, I want to move on from what I'm doing. And just great personality, just really just has this sort of presence, as you might remember. So I said, well, why don't you come down and meet my business partner, and we'll tell you what we do and see if there's something you might have an interest in. So she came down, and we both liked her, and she liked what she heard. I said, why don't you come work for us 2 days a week and continue your other job, 2 or 3, go
Retail
part-time,
job, yeah.
retail job. And you decide whether, you'll see whether you like what you're doing here. And if you don't like it, you didn't give up your other job. And then we'll see if it's a fit. Well, within a month, we knew that she was great, and she liked what she was doing. So she left the private client work the retail work, and came into our business. And she's been there ever since. She now has all her licenses. She's a financial advisor.
Wow.
And she's evolved into being a really competent, great professional, which is fascinating.
Isn't that like that's the kind of stuff that's like making money is great, but then like you can change people's lives because she didn't have like the paper to go into the finance field, right?
Yeah, no, she didn't have the background or the degrees to support that, but we gave her an opportunity. She worked hard, and she was obviously competent, and now she's a financial advisor, which is amazing.
Totally changed her life, right?
Yeah.
14 years. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's very cool.
She's a really special person. And the woman that she brought in, Candace, same kind of thing, right out from undergrad, had a marketing degree, worked in retail as well, and she's super hard worker. And initially, she was right out of undergrad, so she was struggling just to kind of move from being in college into the working world. And one day something clicked, and she just got comfortable with what she was doing. And all the things that Rebecca had been doing for us, Candace took over and ran the operations while Rebecca was becoming an advisor, and she's been phenomenal. So we've had 2 really great hires there, and someday they'll be running the place, and I'll be retired somewhere playing golf with you.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really
that's
good.
the stuff that jazzes me. After you've sort of reached a certain level, then well, it depends. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
I need to make more money. Yeah. But that's great.
It's really at a certain point it's unnerving because you've got payroll to support, and you're trying to make money to cover everybody's lifestyle and the payroll. But as they elevate, and you realize they're doing the job now. They can self-sustain, and it's really rewarding for them and you as their mentor or manager or whatever. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Really great. Really great.
So this merger that you did is called a merger with us. So, and now you guys are at $6 billion in assets under management.
Right.
So now that gives you a whole, I guess, how has that been good? How has it been bad? Is that allow you to expand the services and the service that you can give your clients? Walk us through why you guys decided to do that and how that, sort of benefits your customers, moving forward.
Well, I'd say initially the reason we did it was we kind of grew the firm to, I think 400 million, and we were like, and that's talking to every friend, family, every network connection you had, and really trying to build the business. And you thought, okay, we got to 400 million. How do you get to 800 million?
Right.
Well, you can't do what you just did to get to 400 million to get to 8. So you got to come up with other ways. And you can do it organically, but that's very hard. Or you can do it through acquisition, which we tried through our own sort of roll-up strategy, where we went out to other small RIAs and that needed a succession plan, and tried to convince them to join up with us, and we'd provide the platform, and they could retire eventually. And that was really hard to do. It's a very difficult thing. Yeah, really, really difficult for a variety of reasons. People that own their own firm think it's worth more than it's worth.
Right.
You show them the discounted cash flow model, like here's what it's worth.
Right.
But they just have a different view. To some people, identify themselves through their business, and if they lose their business.
Yeah. Let me stop for a second. So, right. So, and I guess with so what happens with those companies if they don't have a succession plan in place? Do they just sort of one day they're no more and it just disappears, or what? Because sometimes that holds you back sometimes if you have, if you're trying to do a succession plan and you don't have a realistic idea of what your business is worth.
Yeah.
And you can figure that out pretty quickly. If you talk to a couple of people and everybody's like, no, it's too much. No, it's too much. Maybe it's too much.
You can narrow it in.
Yeah.
I think what was disappointing with me through the process is this industry that we're in, we're advisors and we're fiduciaries to our clients. So the guy that, or the gal that needs to create a succession plan, like her first priority should be her clients.
Yeah.
And, if they don't do something, then they're really not taking care of their clients. And that was an aha moment for me, that these people weren't really the fiduciaries they represented themselves to be, because they were really selfish about this process. And really what you should be doing is creating a succession plan so your clients are taken care of. So yeah, you're right. They might sell out. They might have a fire sale at the end where they, if you want to retire and you want to sell your book to me, well, it's not worth, 3 times revenue or whatever the multiple is, or however you EBOC or whatever your denominator is, because you're not going to be around. Whereas if you sold it 5 years ago and you would help transition these clients and the revenue would continue, that same revenue is really at risk because you're out, or you're dead, or whatever the case may be. So that was really, I thought it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, you would
for
think.
all these reasons that you're in.
And
this
they're in
business.
finance, but you're in finance.
Yeah.
You should have
guys.
a decent idea of
exactly.
And
we were kind of an easy place to be a part of. We had this no jerk rule. No jerks as clients.
That's
no
right.
Jerks
That's
as,
right. No jerks. Yeah.
No jerks.
Talk about the no jerk rule, because I've heard you talk about this before.
Steady no jerk rule. No jerks as employees. No jerks as counterparties. No jerks as clients. And because you spend a lot of time with these people, employees, partners specifically, that you don't want to be around people you don't like. So and we might have a client or two that probably doesn't define jerk, but might be pushing a little bit, but not really. We have a lot of really great clients, but I thought that the no jerk rule would resonate with people that would want to merge into us. So that didn't happen, and we as I said, we hired a few breakaway brokers, but we really didn't have any success on the roll-up thing. So we just said we were going to sit still. Our accounting firm that did our accounting work, and they were a center of influence, introduced clients to us, and we introduced clients to them. They went through a merger with HBK. And our accountant called up one day and said, hey, these guys have a wealth management division, and they want to get into Philadelphia. You really should talk to these guys. And we thought, okay, well, your accountant is your trusted advisor.
Right,
so,
exactly.
If we could get a bunch of accountants to refer clients to us, that would be a great trade. So long story short, we merged with the wealth management division of HBK, and instead of having 6 salespeople, Gus and me and Andrew included, now we had 60, because we had 60 accountants in the Mid-Atlantic region that, in theory, would refer clients. It took a while to get going, but now it's actually doing well, and we have a nice symbiotic relationship with this sister company. So that's why we did it, and we definitely went from 4 to 800 million. Now the markets are a little softer, so maybe we're not double, but pretty close. Getting close. I think we got close to $1 billion when the markets were really peaking. But that was the reason to do it, and it also provided a succession plan for the 3 partners. To the extent I'm not getting any younger, so there's an opportunity for me to to sell back to the firm my interest, and so it's been good. It's been good.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's been really good.
So, it's interesting that you were saying about the no jerk rule. We talked to, especially with IT services companies. So we were just at a convention last week or the week before. Jeff was there. Jeff, the producer, was there. What was that, 2 weeks ago now? Down in Fort Lauderdale.
I think it was about 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And these guys, MSPs, right? The guys that manage your services. Yeah. And they talk about like firing their customers, like every now and then. And Gary Pica, right?
Yeah.
So he talks about that.
Yeah.
Like, once a year you got to go through and,
Yeah. Sift through.
which customers am I going to fire? Which is
Yeah.
like the no jerk rule.
The top of the list are the guys that don't pay their bill. I think you're out of here. The other
Yeah.
thing that you mentioned, MSPs, that I didn't comment on, and it's something that's worth mentioning, is the merger has allowed us to have more arrows in our quiver to provide different services to our clients. We do have an MSP. The accounting firm has an MSP up in North Jersey called Vertilocity.
Oh, you actually own the MSP?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So we, not only
Wow.
tax the services and audit, valuation services, investment banking. We now have trust and estates. So we've got a lot more subject matter experts that we can bring to the table with a client,
right.
including, value-added resellers and MSPs.
Well, and especially now, depending on how sensitive your information is, because the whole issue of cybersecurity
Yeah.
and keeping your stuff secure, especially if you're medical, right? Because you have HIPAA
Yeah.
regulations, and I could see how that would be an advantage, being an accounting firm that has an MSP that's going to demand the highest level of security for
Sure.
for your firm
Yep.
versus yeah. Well, that's
books
cool.
and records is one thing, but I think these guys realize doing 1040s is probably not the most lucrative thing. That
Mhm.
and, someday a computer's going to do your 1040 for you and your tax returns. So they had to find ancillary or complementary businesses to get involved in, and they've done a pretty good job of that.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's
Very
really
cool.
good. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's sort of starting their own business or making that transition? What words of wisdom do you have, or what things should they
So
avoid, or what were the mistakes that you made early on that other people shouldn't make?
I think there's some basic things that I have 3 grown children now, so they've heard this more than once. But I've pretty much told it to everyone that has ever worked for me, is that integrity is critical. That's just beyond reproach. You need to maintain your integrity. At the end of the day, that's all you have. But equal to that is hard work. As I was saying earlier, I used to go to work on Saturdays. None of my buddies went to work on Saturdays, but I did, just because I'm competitive and I wanted to get ahead and I wanted to, push myself, and I wanted to be, thought of as highly and get the highest marks. And so I think it seems kind of too basic, but just work harder than everybody. It's just not that complicated. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. Just work hard. And if somebody tells you to do something, do it. You'll be shocked how successful things work out for you. But underlying all that is integrity. You really need to have integrity. People need to trust you, and you need to, earn that trust. So, and then just work hard. Work hard.
Yeah. I think I told you this story. I was in Reno, Nevada, visiting, for fun, for vacation.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
we had a big client there. So I'm flying back, and sitting in first class, and this guy's sitting next to me, and this guy is you could tell he's just very intense guy. So I introduced myself to the guy. Turns out it's Coach Graham from the Arizona Sun Devils.
Oh.
D1 football coach.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy smokes, what does it take to become a D1 football coach, right? And this guy was just intense. So I'm like picking his brain. He was very generous with his time. And I said to him, Coach Graham, what's the secret to your success? And like half a second, he's like, and I'm thinking recruiting, finding the best, getting the best talent, right. All kinds of like
strategy,
different kinds of things. He says, without skipping a beat, nothing to do with the college kids. Yeah. There's a sport. He's like, the character of the people that work for me. Huh. That was it. Literally, the character. To your point, integrity. The
Wow.
character of the people that work for me.
How about that?
Because, especially in business, like you've met a lot of the people that worked with me, that helped build the company, that like rock stars that I've had the pleasure of working with. But you do get people who don't have that integrity, and eventually it comes out.
Yeah.
Eventually it comes out. And it's such a negative impact on the business, especially, so sometimes it might take you a while to figure out that it's not there.
Yeah.
And you wind up spinning your wheels, or you're like, okay, let's agree to do this, this, and this. And then they don't do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Oh no, well, I decided to go in this direction, where you're thinking, well, wait a minute. They had no intention
Yeah.
of going in the direction,
Yeah.
filling out the strategy. And then, as I've been in that situation where eventually you figure out that there's an integrity issue.
Yeah.
Because it just breaks down everything, because because it's a complicated thing, right? You have all these different people working together, and you're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. And if there's one puzzle piece, like if you're like, hey, Jim, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. And if they've got other ideas, or there's, God forbid, and I've dealt with, there's, employees can do bad things, and, I've been through all that stuff, but it's a huge thing.
It's a huge thing. There's when I first went to New York, the first weekend I was there, I went to work on Saturday, and I thought I'd be the only one in the place. And my boss walks in. She's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, well, I wanted to get this deliverable that you asked for on, and I wanted to have it for you Monday morning." She's like, "Oh, okay. See you later. Have a good weekend." And I know that resonated with her. Like, this guy, he's getting the job done. And then one of the companies that we called on was Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns was a great Wall Street firm that didn't survive 2008 and the mortgage meltdown, unfortunately, because it was a really great firm. And the guy that ran it was a guy named Ace Greenberg. And Ace Greenberg was
what a great name, by the way.
Legendary.
Ace.
Yeah, he
Ace.
was awesome.
My name's Larry. Why didn't my parents name me Ace?
Exactly.
What's your name? Ace. Ace Dillon. Double guns.
He was just this legendary guy, kind of like Sandy Weil and all.
Because of his name. All right, continue.
Ace. And Ace Greenberg was interviewed, and they said, what's the key to your success, Ace? And he said, oh, that's easy. I only hire PhDs. And like, oh, okay, well, you're Bear Stearns. I guess you can afford to hire PhDs. He goes, no. Poor, hungry, and driven people, PhDs. And I'm reading this. I'm like, oh, that's me. That's me. I'm poor, hungry, and driven. PhD. I'm a PhD. But I loved it, And you get people that are hungry and driven and have integrity, you can kind of go places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the what's the future? What's the future like?
Yeah. I think we're going to keep rolling. I just turned the big 6-0, which was interesting, but that's just a number. I still feel great. My knees are holding up. Hopefully playing a lot of sports, but continue to grow the business and continue to bring the junior people up and make them ready to take over. And sometime between now and when I turn 70, I'll sort of go out to pasture. Maybe sooner rather than later, maybe gradually over the next decade, sort of work my way down to, but building this great team behind me is making it an easy decision whenever that decision will happen. So and helping people out, I get a real rush out of helping people, and I do it personally through volunteer work and what have you. But my business is essentially helping people, and you really get a real positive feeling when you square somebody away and get them ready for retirement, or help them with trust and estates, or if you can solve some problems for people financially, it goes a long way. So I really like that about my job, and so I hope to continue to do that and get everybody situated for retirement and whatever the future brings them, and have some fun in between.
Yeah. And that is the thing, right? Because you can have because I was talking to my accountant, very successful folks at different things, but terrible, terrible at planning for the future, planning for the retirement. You know, what words of wisdom do you have for people? Because you can't start too early.
Yeah.
And especially the dollars. You know, I was fairly disciplined, so I started putting dollars away a long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
And those dollars now, where they are now, compared to when they were put in, those you get the longest. So so take us through successful entrepreneur or person, making lots of dough. Like one of the I told you this, one of the greatest pieces of advice I got from Wharton. I haven't graduated yet, so I haven't. I'm still. I think I need like an art elective or like astronomy 3 because I took Astro 1 and 2. I'm like a couple of electives away. So technically, some people say I'm a dropout. I say I'm still a student. So I want to go back and get my my student ID so I can get, which is better, the senior discount or the student discount. So, but one of the greatest pieces of advice. So we had these really super successful entrepreneurs that would come in and talk to us, right? So, and we got the guy. I think he is the guy that had the first handy wipes.
Oh yeah, wow.
You know, with the like. Yeah. He's like, guys, I had to design a circle. Just like pull the handy wipe thing out.
Crazy.
And anyways, and they made millions. So anyway, he said, you're all, you know, you're at the Wharton School. You're all going to be successful. He said, when you start to make money, we got to stop clinking things down.
Oh, sorry.
No, me and you. So he said, when you start to make money, don't buy the Ferrari.
Yeah.
Right. Which is funny based on our conversation today. But,
right.
And that was one of the takeaways. Like, yeah, you're going to kill it, but don't buy the Ferrari. Invest your money in your business or this or that.
Yeah.
So what advice what are the key mistakes that people make, and take us maybe through that arc of like when you're starting, you know, maybe 2 stages, like when you're starting in your career, how should you be viewing it? And then when you're hitting your stride through, like you're killing it.
Right.
Because you've met people, my accountant's met people who absolutely killing it.
Right.
And have nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing planned for retirement, and then something goes south, and then, you know, craziness. So go ahead.
I think the basics of what you're saying about can't start early enough. You know, putting money away in tax deferred accounts like retirement plans are key, and you know, it doesn't have to be a lot.
Right.
Just start off small, and that what's the 8th wonder of the world? Compounding
interest, right?
Yeah, is just phenomenal. So that, you know, you build on that, and then once you're hitting your stride and you keep getting raises, you take part of your raise and you put that into tax deferred accounts or taxable accounts, saving, and then diversifying away from not just having a big IRA when you retire or a big taxable account. Have a little bit of real estate and, you know, invest in other things, maybe some private equity, and, you know, if you have the ability to diversify in things like that, so that when you retire, you don't have just one source of cash flow. You know, you're pulling from different areas, and, you know, insurance. I've never been a big insurance person, but you know, there are certain insurance products that help as well. So it's nice having, you know, a couple different levers. So when you're retired, to have different levers to pull,
right,
to meet your cash flow needs in retirement is really good, and the ability to move away from just liquid assets to real estate, to private equity, to other, you know, small business opportunities. There are all kinds of different funds for, you know, venture capital funds and other ways to gain access to that. Some of them you have to be accredited investor for, but there are like micro funds that you can join that, you know, you might get a pop, you might get a single here and there, but then you also might get a pop. But that's just on the periphery. But you really want to have a diverse portfolio of assets so that when you retire, you know, you're pulling from these different levers. There are a million stories. I mean, I can't even tell you. Just, you know, the doctor who just got out and joins a big orthopedic surgery firm here in Philadelphia that everybody knows, the biggest one. And, the first thing he did was bought a Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had a condo in Boston that was over levered, and he bought a house here in Philly, and the guy just, went the wrong direction too quickly. So he had no money. He literally was so illiquid, kind of like Bonfires of the Vanity. The guy had houses everywhere, but he couldn't afford McDonald's. So, it's discipline. You have to have discipline. You need to stay within your lanes and way of lifestyle and what have you. But having the different levers when you retire, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah. And then there's also people who, not even entrepreneurs, have like, a good to great corporate job.
Yeah.
And then save like crazy. And I think, there's some stories where you were shocked at how much they had amassed by just, having discipline.
Living
walk
under
us through that.
Yeah, I think it's a guy who didn't even have a college degree and had a couple different businesses, but went in and met him, and he's driving a pickup truck and what have you, and don't judge a book by its cover. And we went through all of his assets, and he was 70, and I think he had over $5 million saved. And, and he probably spent $60,000 a year, was amazing. And it was just through being disciplined and, and living within his means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, and I think it's simple advice even for, if you're in business for yourself, or, if you're working for someone, to live below your means, because that means you're getting cash set aside, so you can use that as capital for your business, or you can use it for investment. But I think that's the key, and I think the earlier you get started with that, the better off you are.
Oh, yeah,
because those dollars at 20 turn into a bunch of dollars by the time you're ready for retirement. But it can be done. No matter what stage of the game, what sort of your income is or your situation is, as long as you get started early, it makes it easier.
I just started a book today. I haven't gotten that far into it. It's called Paychecks and Playchecks. So, you gotta have your paychecks, and then you're eventually have your playchecks, and you're having a combination of the both of them.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know how that book turns out. But
Good.
Somebody had referred that to me today.
Good. Well, listen, Bill Casey, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Didn't know I was a PhD, did you?
No, this has been really good. It's really good for people, I think, to see that the arc of your career is really interesting, and then how you've really leveraged it. And I think that having all that experience, I know you say you wish you got started earlier, but having all that experience probably made this part, I know it was difficult, but probably made this part easier. But also getting into the situation where you're now, partnered in with or merged in with this company that's now $6 billion, it's easy for you.
Right.
It's easy for you to make that transition, and there's more you can contribute to that and bring to that. So it's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Been a good run. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
This is great.
Yeah.
All right. And
Jeff,
thanks,
the producer, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right.
All right.
Listen, have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye.